Welcome to Protea Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling the unique stories that shaped our guests' careers to invaluable advice that fueled their success. We're here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insight and perspectives that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Protea Conversations. Today I'm joined by Lisa Hanna, a strategic voice in the estate transition and legacy planning. Lisa currently serves as Vice President of Private Client Services at Berghof Realty Corporation, where she works closely with vineyard and winery owners in Napa and Sonoma, helping them navigate the deeply personal and often complex journey of succession and estate transition. With a strong background in real estate, family mediation, and succession planning, Lisa brings a rare mix of empathy and execution to her work. She previously served as an estate and succession mediator at Legacy Mediation Partners, where she specialized in wealth transfer strategy and conflict resolution for families and businesses. She's also a founding member of Women's Leaders, an organization dedicated to elevating women into C-level and board roles across the industry. Today we'll be talking about the challenges and opportunities around estate transitions in the wine industry, what a legacy truly means, and why it's never too early to start planning for your future. Lisa, welcome to Protea Conversations.
Thank you for having me, Zane.
Good to have you. You definitely operate in a space that is a little different to what you run into on a day-to-day basis in normal business. You're working with almost like a secret society at this point of major change in the world that I think most people aren't even aware is occurring. And I know you try to push it out there, as much education as possible when you get to talk about it. But most people don't know it's happening. Most people just assume it's business as usual. But really in the background, there's a major change in the way business is being done for so many years.
Oh, I like that. I haven't really thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I do operate in the back rooms, I guess, of people's lives and hoping to get them into the front room, I guess. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of the stuff that you deal with, which is in real estate and, ownership of those properties, is not something that the normal people see, right? The city that I grew up in, South Africa, there was like 3 families that owned like 75% of all like properties in the whole city, right? It was a ridiculous amount, and it was just last name, so you didn't know who was running it, and there was the patriarch that they all saw and assumed was running the business, but nobody really knew. It could have been family members, it could have been a board, it could have just been day-to-day management people. There's no sense of it. And I think that's what you sort of run into it over here. South Africa is about the size of California. Now you take that to the US, it's a big scope, and there's a lot of movement in the background. And most of these properties are in the name of some sort of corporation or LLC, and there's no real face to who owns it. So I think it is hard for the general public to understand that this could be moving from a grandfather to a granddaughter or father to daughter, and those types of transactions occurring, people don't quite think about it. Like, it's because it's not in the mainstream. If you look at the media that's out there and the TV shows out there, it's always, the men doing business, right? And in reality, and I think there are some shows like this where it is, well, actually, they might be the face of it, but the people doing the real business, and maybe even the ones that are owning it, aren't males.
Very true. I mean, there is a huge transfer of assets going on currently. I mean, in the news, they call it the greatest transfer of wealth. There is also a new term called the feminization of wealth, which Zane, you've heard me talk about, which is very real and very vibrant. And you're right, it is behind the scenes for sure, because you don't always see the transfer of ownership as long as things keep going smoothly. The problem is that a lot of times they don't go smoothly, and that's when I get called in.
Yeah, I mean, anything to do with families and moving assets around between the family is touchy subjects, and I've seen it in the winery world, and obviously you've seen it in your space as well, where a lot of these things just collapse because the group that's supposed to be taking it over don't necessarily want to, or in most cases don't have the right skill set to be able to take over that responsibility.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the three questions that I ask in every mediation, anything that has to do with any of these legacy properties is, have you talked to the next generation? Do they want it? Are they capable? Do they understand how to deal with it? I mean, do they have the skill set to understand how to take over this asset? And thirdly, do they have the cash flow? Not just today, but and I will make them determine whether they have it 5 years from now. And that stems from my background, which started in Wall Street finance and so on, and looking at this very differently than I think a lot of people do, that this is a true investment and it takes money to own an investment like this.
Great. And that's a perfect segue. I do want to dig in because I was looking through your resume on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh my word, this is not just extensive, but it is very diverse. I'd love, if you could just dive in a little bit, tell us from the beginning sort of how you got started out, where did you start, and sort of work us through your career a little bit to the point we're at this point.
Sure. Just a quick and dirty. I graduated from Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley in finance. It was in '89. The economy was in a downturn. And the only job that I could get at the time was being a client service representative with a company called RCM Capital Management. And I wanted to get into this big analyst job and so on. But it was the only thing that I could get into. And I'll tell you, Zane, it was the game changer. RCM Capital was, for the most part, it was run by a gentleman, Claude Rosenberg. He was iconic in San Francisco. He was the Warren Buffett of value investing in the city at the time. And by being in client services, I was able to sit in all these meetings, and they ran CalPERS, CPERS, all the pension funds of California, also state of Alaska. And he also ran all the original VC money, Brooke Byers, Frank Caulfield, all the guys who started Silicon Valley down there and Sand Hill Road. So that tells you what kind of iconic investor he was. I mean, when you've got the VCs giving him their money. And so it was my next education to sit in there. So I rode that out for a long time, went to all their meetings, understood what was going on from the investment side, learned tremendously. And I did that. And then I was asked to be on a team of people who were developing a very unique equity research project. And it was in the time when technology was coming into being. It was literally when Google was a micro, nobody knew what Google meant. Nobody knew what, a search engine was. And remember, all of this was happening on the West Coast, but the big wealth managers were on the East Coast. So there was a huge lack of understanding of what was going on the West Coast. So it's all of a sudden flipping the world on its axis, right? I mean, upside down. Yep. And it's easy to sit here today and talk about AI, but I feel so lucky that I was at the beginning of the beginning where I started seeing this transformation. Yep. And so we needed internally to create a team of people who understood what was going on the street with this stuff, right? I mean, really, what was an iPhone? What was happening with Apple? What is Google? What is Yahoo? And so I was part of that team of helping build a very unique, first of its kind, marketplace research, where we were going truly into the marketplace and finding who were the early adopters, what was happening, what was, going on, and taking that data and being able to transfer it into something that was relevant to money managers. We did this in-house. Dresdner Bank bought out RCM. So the partners sold it. None of us wanted to work for a German bank. We got a non-compete and we left. And a couple of us took the concept and we started a company called Off the Record Research. And Off the Record Research was a company where we took this marketplace research, very unique of its time, and sold it to the who's who of Wall Street. The Magellan Fund, Jeff Finnick. I mean, we dealt with Stan Druckenmiller. I mean, Soros. I mean, all the names out there. And again, Zane, it was like, here I was, this young woman who had been with this iconic company, and now I was with the who's who of Wall Street. I mean, and we were teaching them what was going on and confirming and refuting what company management was saying, because company management, even CFOs, were laggards in understanding what was going on. They didn't even understand what was going on with some of their own products. So that was the beginning of almost everything I learned. They say you learn in kindergarten. Well, almost everything I learned at that point. I was a relatively young woman in Wall Street. We opened up, we were bi-coastal, but we had to have an office in New York, as you can imagine. We merged with a trading organization, and then we were able to kind of take off. And it was a hockey stick. I mean, we were doing nothing, and then it just kind of took off. Yeah. So did that for a long time, and then left to raise my daughters. And quite frankly, it was a job that I would wake up at times, Zane, not remembering what city I was in. I mean, you know what I mean? And with hives, I mean, it was wonderful. And I made, some decent money doing it and had a lot of prestige. But with that, as you know, comes a lot of other, sides to it. And I, at this time, had 3 little daughters, and I chose to be their mother. And best decision I made. So I got off the Wall Street train, but in that I was type A. I mean, I lost my identity. So I immediately flipped into a consultative role where I started working. I lived in California. I went back to Marin County, raising the girls, and worked with a lot of women who started coming to me about helping them wanting to launch businesses, doing things. I became an angel investor. I just took all of my financial know-how and acumen and turned it into a consultative role, which enabled me I didn't miss a lot of soccer games. I didn't miss, I was able to be their mom. And I was sitting at my table way before the pandemic when people started, I took everything in-house. And so I wrote that, and that's probably why you saw kind of the differences. And in that, I did a tremendous amount. I built some of the first micro cap funds to help launch women's businesses. Was an angel investor myself in San Francisco. I always knew that when the girls were gone, I missed some of I hate to say it, but I played the big game and I missed it a bit. Mm-hmm. And I always knew that I wanted to get back into a sort of investment role. And so I started looking around and I realized I wasn't that interested anymore in, Wall Street. Wall Street had changed a lot. It was very different. But what I was noticing is that there was a lot of movement in commercial real estate and investment properties. And so I started poking around, doing some work in that, and realizing that was always something that had interested me. I had done flipping homes, had my mortgage license, did a lot of things, but I decided to dive in and understand more about what was going on, in the commercial space. And this was the time around the pandemic, and, and office spaces vacant, a big shift. And what I found was that there were less women in commercial real estate, Zane, than there were in Wall Street. And, being an ex-Wall Streeter, I was shocked. Yeah. And not only very little ownership at the time, or I thought so, but really just very few women in the business of buying, selling, negotiating, any of it. Property management, transactional, so on. And so I thought, okay, this is really not good. I mean, there's something that's a huge miss. And I myself, being an investor, never actually really thought about investing in commercial real estate. And I thought, why is that? And it was because as women, we don't talk about it. We don't, it's always been kind of what a man does. And it always seemed out of reach. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I mean, I was a Wall Streeter, I understand investments, right? So as I started diving in, I started working with a very good friend of mine, Ted Amiro, who was a big commercial broker in San Francisco. And I'm like, okay, teach me the ropes. And what was happening is that a lot of his clients needed out. They were passing away. I mean, he's in his late 70s. It's just the nature of the greatest transfer of wealth. The baby boomers are passing away. There's cognitive issues. And all of a sudden, it was the women, the matriarchs of the family, that were left with the properties or making the decisions, and they didn't understand it. And so I was sitting in the room full of, a bunch of men and women and the siblings or the children and all that stuff, and realizing that, quite frankly, the men in the room wanted to transact. They wanted to just say, well, let's sell it. Let's do this. And the people in the room, the women in the room, were nowhere near ready to transact, that there was a step that was missing about what did they want. And they needed a level of education and understanding what they were holding. And, was this a viable property? Was it going to continue to cash flow? A lot of these properties in San Francisco and some of the major cities had deferred maintenance. A lot of the baby boomers rode a great wave. They made a tremendous amount of money, Zane, without doing a lot. I hate to say it, but it's true. And so a lot of these properties had fallen into disrepair. Some of them were under rented, over, all this stuff, right? And so there was a hugely important step that was missing. And the first time that I realized was a change in I realized I was onto my third career and last career was that I kicked all the people out of the room. I had a 90-year-old mother there where her husband had bought multifamily apartment buildings in San Francisco. And she just broke down and sobbed. And because she couldn't make a decision. And I kicked everybody out of the room. I talked to her for an hour and a half to hear why they had bought the property, what she really wanted, what was her honesty about it. And I realized at that point, that's what I wanted to do. Crucially important to find that out. And in that, then better decisions could be made. And that was me becoming truly a mediator and working through that.
So I did some research while we were talking, and I just typed in what percentage of investment real estate is owned by women. So this is Google's AI popping it out. So there's no real backing, but we're going to take Google at its word. It normally does pretty good, right? And it gives me a detailed breakdown here. It says real estate investor base. Women make up roughly 30% of real estate investor base, indicating gender disparity in the industry. Next point is commercial real estate. The commercial real estate sector is particularly male-dominated, with women representing less than 3% of commercial real estate investors. So now we're really getting into the point where, it's all over the place. It is interesting, though, that they do bring up that in home ownership, and they're comparing single women to single men. It says single women own about 2.64 million more homes than single men, and 66% of all real estate agents are female. So the interesting part of that is, there may be not a lot of investors, but people actually making this industry work are the females, right? Like they're the ones that are actually making a clock. It's a success in real estate. Women tend to be outperform men in real estate investment returns, often as much as 2 to 1. So even though it is very underperformed, and I think, sometimes that can play into the numbers as well when you're comparing small to big, it can definitely outperform it. But they talk about the contributing factors. Being women's strengths in real estate investing include careful market research, low risk property choices, and willingness to commit long term. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a good segue, and those are what Google says to us. What is your thoughts on the whole space? What it looks like? Like, does that match sort of your feeling and understanding? Or are you seeing a slightly different look at that, or is it fairly accurate?
Well, Google doesn't discern. So remember, there are 2 asset classes in real estate: residential and commercial. So Google's quote, so when they say the majority of women the 60% are selling commercial, that includes residential. So I X that out. That's very female focused, and that is not something, there's not a lack of that. And it is very positive. And, in a lot of, everyone jokes that the woman just, buys the home in the sense of what she wants and all that stuff. Again, so I'm going to discern between residence, with your primary residence, and true commercial investment property that is a warehouse, that's multifamily, that's a strip mall, that's an office space. So that is the 3%. That is completely dominated by men. And let me go a little deeper in that, Zane, because I'm fascinated by this and / concerned. So when I started doing it, because remember, I'm a researcher, right? I was trained to go deep into what this means from macro to micro, because that's how I made a buck on Wall Street, right? It's concerning. And I'll tell you why. Because if men control what is sold, how property is managed, who they rent it to, what the rents are on all of these investment properties in all of our cities and towns. Look around every time you drive down, right? Just think about that. You drive down in your own city and you say 3% of women control, that means 97% are controlled and decisions are made by a male brain. I'm just saying, male slice of it, male whatever. No good, no bad, no judgment.
Yep.
But that is so unequal. And women are, I mean, like, it bothers me. It bothers me that I myself wasn't in this, because I feel that I'm on a mission to equalize that a little bit, because what happens is that it is so slanted and concerning, because it's like, there's a lot of money that has been left on the table, that women not investing in this kind of stuff, but they also start being left out of the table. Because when you own commercial property, then you are part of the chamber. You're part of, what's going on in the city. You actually can dictate some of the stuff. You can tell what roads are going which, you sit at the table because you care. So if a woman is not part of this, and she's not sitting at the table in her own community. And that is a big thing to me. And that's something nobody talks about. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. And that's the voice and the talk that I want to put out there, and to start making more and more women and people aware of that.
So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying that people who own commercial real estate will just have a louder voice when it comes into sort of the bigger issues within a city, because they're obviously there to protect their assets, so they're talking up more frequently.
Absolutely. And let's just put a pin on that and say, now, because I step in and mediate, you were seeing more and more women inherit properties now, like, right, investment properties, right? The greatest transfer of wealth is happening. Women are going to start equalizing this. And Zane, now the question is, what are they going to do with it? Are they going to start, owning their power and learning and educating themselves and doing something with it? Are they going to defer to the men in their life? Are they going to let go of that? And that's a big question mark out there, right? Over the next decade.
Based on some of that feedback that Google just gave, it sounds like there's probably going to be a lot of the latter portion of that, which is give away that property, not hand it over to somebody else, but sell it off, because they talk about why are females successful at investing in real estate, because they understand risk better. They've done the research, and they would move a risky asset if they feel like it's not good for their portfolio. Now, let's be realistic. Commercial real estate is inherently risky, especially the way the world is changing right now. So that would, for me, without having the nitty gritty in it, feels like there's going to be a lot of that property, even though it's inherited, probably moved back to a male owner, because that male owner is willing to handle a little bit more risk than the female owner is.
Yeah, it's very primal, Zane. I mean, we all, right? I mean, you go back, and the women were the sitting, having the babies, and the men were the hunter gatherers. And I was a sociology minor, and it's fascinating, right? Because you're right, it plays very into that. And so, yes, there is the possibility of it turning back into the male hands, or corporations, or international buyers, which are stepping in. There's also those kind of things. So I guess my goal, though, is to help educate them and, bring more and more women to the table of saying, let's talk about this, come together potentially in investment groups, male and female, right? I mean, balance it out a little bit, have some ownership of this, even if you don't want as much, even if it's like, you don't want the saturation of that, but you can come in but sit at the table. You know what I mean? Like, learn a little bit. Don't just automatically let it go. Give yourself some time to decide if you really want to or not. And I work really hard in my mediations and stuff around that, Zane, to just give everybody, male and female, a voice and really feel what they're doing. It's amazing, because I sit sometimes where the children, let's say there's a brother and sister, and oftentimes the sister has gone and is educated and has worked hard or whatever. And the brother, maybe not so much, but she still starts deferring to her brother about making the decision, instead of saying, okay, I'm an accountant, or
I have the facts.
Zane at
I know the answer, but what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think? And so one of my big things is, and I know I'm rare in the mediation space, because I really do try to empower everybody to really say, okay, don't just cave. Let's just figure this out. And vice versa, even with sometimes, the brothers are, anyway, they fight anyway. I can go on and on about family dynamics, but yes.
So one of the interesting things that you mentioned earlier was the cash flow side of it. And I wonder, with this transfer of wealth, and, it feels like the risk is that most of these properties will end up back into corporations or into foreign investor hands, because people that are sort of investing it, the people, well, inheriting it, the people who said, okay, these are going to be your assets, didn't prepare full cash flow, even if that was just short term, to help them manage the first part. I mean, property tax expensive, maintenance expensive. I mean, that's how we get into deferred maintenance. We know what an absolute disaster deferred maintenance is on properties right now. I was just listening to something just this past week about deferred maintenance, and effectively, if you don't have a ton of money and you can't get a bit of cut from the price, you're in deep trouble if you're buying an investment property right now, because there is millions. Because also when that transfer happens, all the grandfathering disappears, right? So any of the things that the city said was okay is no longer okay because you're a new owner, you better come and fix it. So how do we work with people coming into this space with this great transfer of wealth to actually be in a situation where they can actually hold on to it? Because it feels like a generation has set the next generation up for failure by not preparing them, especially from a cash flow standpoint.
100%. I mean, it is, I will be working until I'm 101. You know what I mean, Zane?
Yeah.
For that reason alone, very well articulated on your end, for sure. And it is disturbing to me. I mean, one of my goals is to try to get out there ahead of it. I mean, I think the same thing with you, same thing with any estate planning attorney, really just trying to get in ahead and recognizing that, unfortunately, yes, the baby boomer generation have not done a great job preparing. They had their head down and they built a lot. But, maybe they truly don't have the skill set. And, a lot of times, I'll go back to your original statement. A lot of times why it's backroom dealings that I deal with, because they're embarrassed, because they don't, some of these families with big names and everything, they've lost a lot of their financial acumen. And so it is, there's a lot of embarrassment, unfortunately, when we lead with ego, and they don't know who to ask. I hate to say it, but I think your generation of males, Zane, is, I mean, I see you more willing to ask and so on, but the older generation, I'm just blanketing it, so nobody sue me or anything, but they don't ask.
I love broad generalizations on this.
They don't ask, Zane. They don't ask for help. They don't ask for things they don't know about. And so they freeze, and it's paralysis, and it ends up hurting, their wives and their children, exactly what you're saying. So what do you say? So, it is interesting because it's case by case, but as I'm doing more and more of this, I'm realizing that everything has its day. And I'm going to say, like, we're in the wine country here, right? I mean, and I myself, have a vineyard, and I say to my partner, everything has a day, meaning some of the stuff has to go. Some of these buildings, vines, everything are irrelevant at times, overplanted, overbuilt. Do we need all of these office buildings? I mean, that are, 30 floors up, and no, probably not. Probably need actually more pods living, like where you bring in and create neighborhoods in financial districts. I mean, then we need this. So you're finding, to me, this whole generation built this up. We lived a certain way, and Zane, we're in a revolution. We'll look back and I mean, maybe we'll be dead by then. I don't know, but I'm saying we're going to look back, and our world is changing. And a lot of these buildings, a lot of these properties, a lot of these vines, a lot of these wines are just irrelevant. And nobody, again, I don't hear a lot of that talking either, because it's like, it was, and so some of it has to go, and I think that, of course, that causes a lot, bigger issues, and money is involved in all of that. But maybe that's why I want more women involved at the table to actually help make some of these decisions about what is relevant anymore. And again, I cut my teeth in San Francisco, and, quite frankly, I mean, craziness, right? I mean, and that city is crawling out a bit, but I mean, these buildings that I would go to, I mean, inhabited by homeless. I mean, the owners had not been there for years. And by the way, nobody wants to move into them. So, what do you do, right? Is it worth maybe taking them down to the ground and building something else, building a parklet, building a daycare, building maybe something more relevant to bring children like myself, like I have 3 daughters that live in the city and they're in their 20s. Eventually 1, 2, or 3 of them are going to get married and have a child or 2 or whatever. Right. And I realized that those girls are living in a city that I was like, and I don't think that's okay. Like, I didn't like it as a woman working at Four Embarcadero, where I had to go and I was, you know what I mean? I didn't have the services of being a working mom. And I'm appalled at the fact that, like, after, a generation, very little has changed. So is it time for change, Zane? Probably. I don't know.
Back to your point, it's really hard for change to occur if the same profile is making the decisions year after year, right? So it's very hard for somebody who doesn't have the difficulties of raising children because their spouse just did that all the time to think about all those other amenities that we possibly need. And when you're talking about some of these changes that need to happen in the major cities, the decisions have been driven by money, where these decisions should be driven by money, but there should be a portion of empathy built into it as well as an understanding of what our world looks like. You don't have to go too far back. You can watch movies that were made in like the mid 2000s and you'll be like, holy, that world does not exist anymore. Like that, we're talking 20 years ago. That feels like 100 years ago in terms of the way that the world has developed. And obviously we're moving even quicker right now, right? We've got this whole brand new generation coming in and their expectations are extremely different to any generation before because they've been brought up differently and they've been brought up with technology in their hand. So a lot of these, glamour and ego things that drive the decisions of the older generations right now mean nothing to this younger generation because a big fancy car means nothing, but 1 million followers does mean something, right? So all of a sudden, it's not just about status, it's about so much more. And the requirements of this generation are different to the generations before because of the way we live our lives.
100%. I mean, not one of my daughters has a car, nor do they care or want it. I mean, just that alone. I mean, and the one who actually has the car, the Bullet, it's sitting up at my house because, it's because just that alone, right? I mean,
well,
and
the parking in the city would be more expensive than the payment on the car, so it's not really.
And they just jump in a Uber anyway. Yes, Zane,
Uber
it is.
Or rent a car for a day, or there's so many options to them. Why would you even need it?
Why would you need it? And they start doing the economics about the insurance and whatever and the maintenance. Yes, so it right. So all this has changed, and I love your point because all this has changed, and yet we expect all the stuff that was built over since the 70s on, and actually. It's very interesting if you look at raw land in the 70s, even in the cities, even in all the cities compared to now. And it tells you how much was built by the baby boomers, right? So just think about so much has changed. And yet we think that all this should just kind of keep going and cash flowing. And that's insanity. That's not even rational thinking. And, so then, and I think it's because it's overwhelming, it's an overwhelming thought that our financial districts of cities around the world are actually kind of irrelevant in a lot of ways. Okay. It's an overwhelming thought and they're limping along and they're trying to get people back in and all of that kind of stuff. I'm still going to stand here by myself, maybe, or with others saying they're still irrelevant and they still do not solve problems that women, but parents too. I mean, you men are getting more involved.
I'm single parenting right now. My wife's away. And if I didn't have the flexibility, I'm in the office today, but I'm working at home and I can finish when I want to. If I didn't have that, it would be impossible for me to survive right now. I would have to rely on other people's or caregivers.
Or be able to bring your child somewhere that you felt safe, that was close to you. You know what I mean? Like in a hub or something. And anyway, I could talk a lot.
I think the difficulty is that there are an older generation still making decisions. But we're going to the fact that there is going to be this change in ownership that is going to occur because, believe it or not, 2 things are certain, right? And one of them is death. And that's what's creating this whole change right now. So before we I want to get into the what advice would you have to people sitting listening to this? They're going, I have family that owns a ton of property. I know they do. And I know that's got to go somewhere in the future. And hopefully I get a portion of it. But what do I do when I actually get it? Like, what can I do today to prepare myself for that situation down the line?
Yeah, good question. Again, I'm going to go back to my sociology roots. We are tribal people. We cannot do anything alone. So go find trusted advisors that you do trust. Very, very important. And communicate, have those open conversations, force it if you have to, or bring in a third party. I always laugh because none of us can mediate our own lives. I mean, that's true. We can at times, but if you get stuck, there is no shame in bringing in a neutral third party that can come in and help bring everybody's voice to the table, right? But it is so important. Great, great question, Zane, because this is something that I talk about a lot. Please have the hard conversations. Please go and ask your parents or your grandparents or what they're intending on doing. What do they want? What are the expectations? What is going on with the property? And then start finding, again, those trusted advisors, accountants, wealth advisors, people who understand property, and shore yourself up on knowledge. Just, and be active in that. Don't be passive in that. Don't just say, oh, I'm just going to wait until grandpa passes away or till, grandma's in a better mood to talk about it. I think we have to have the hard conversation because, as you know, people pass away every day, but suddenly and not suddenly. And that you have to prepare for.
That's a great place. We should all start talking a little bit more and understand that there are hard conversations, but we have to have them.
Yes.
And most people don't like talking about politics, religion, and money, but I think we'll be better off if we all talk a little bit about them, especially in our group of people that we trust.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Lisa, can you give us like a breakdown of what your normal day looks like?
There's no normal day, which is why I love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think the normal day is kind of waking up and, I usually have about 3 or 4 mediation cases going on, at one time at all different various aspects of it. So always paying attention to the news, wake up, pay attention to the news, what's relevant going on. So when I sit in a meeting to mediate, there are hours before of prep and data collection and understanding, and there are usually multiple meetings. And so, again, it could vary. There's a lot of meetings where I will have individual family members as a mediator. I have a confidentiality clause that I have to abide by, which allows me to be the mediator and allows them to talk openly. And then there's a lot of data collecting. And again, the way I look at things is macro to micro. What's going on in the world? What's going on relevant to them? And then what, the family, right? And then when I do the hardest work, the real mediation is when I bring everybody together.
Yep.
And kind of, have bring the facts, say some of the hard stuff. Again, because I'm representing resolution, I can say a lot of things that their lawyers cannot say. I can call things out. I can be very honest. I can be very real because I'm there. And it's a really wonderful way to be. And I don't know if I could have done it if I hadn't had the scars of Wall Street. And I'm also there because I see if they don't have the hard conversations and they don't make some of the hard, decisions, Zane, it's not good. They have potential of losing money, property, or both, oftentimes, and litigation is not the answer. And anybody listening out there who thinks they want to litigate, I'm going to say when I first started in this, it was maybe 25, 30K just to initiate a litigation. Right now, 100 to 150K base. Okay. Yeah. And that's no chump change. And that's not even solving anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you speak to a litigator, they'll tell you, please make sure it's your last option. They make money from doing it, and they're still telling you, don't come to me first. Like, it's not where you need to start any situation. So stay away from litigation if you can.
Stay away. And I work with litigators, and I work with very good litigators who bring me in. I have a group actually down in LA that I'm starting to work with around that. And I love that they bring me in because it really, they're going to, I become their last resort before the last resort.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. So, Lisa, you mentioned that this is your third and last career.
Yes.
So we're taking it to the end right now, but sort of tell me, like, give me more of a sense of sort of how you found yourself here. Like, why do you think this is your last career? Like, what is keeping you in this space that you feel like this is where I'm going to finish my working career?
Good question. Well, I mentioned sitting with the 90-year-old mother, and that was just my aha moment. I mean, that was that thing where every chakra in my body, every was just lit up and really like, okay, I'm here to help. And there's a need. And I think everything I've done, Zane, it's been a circuitous route, but in some ways it hasn't, because, what I do is in the intersection of people, investments, and real estate, or law, and it's just this wonderful intersection of where I can sit in the middle and with the intention to help, to resolve. And the world, I've always wanted to help. I've always wanted to help. And this was a way for me to just kind of feel that I could help, but I need to use my brain and I need to be challenged. So, and it just was this wonderful combo of people and business acumen and investment, because I wouldn't be the mediator I am if I didn't understand the underlying and overlying investment outcome. Right. I mean, because I slapped down some big potential settlements and I have no problem putting that down. And again, that is why I'm getting brought into more and more, because I'm a mediator who will say, this is what I believe is the best two outcomes. I am not a lawyer, so but it does help the lawyers, it helps the family, and it gives them a starting point.
Yeah. And as somebody who's been around Lisa, she is very direct and very honest. So I think that helps in your situation.
Thank you. I try. I know sometimes it gets me into trouble because people don't want to hear honesty, but I'm like, that's why I'm here.
Yep. No, I mean, in your role, it makes a lot of sense, and it seems like a great fit. What are your goals for? What are your short-term goals for your? I mean, your role. Your current role is pretty new. I know you've been in the space for a little bit, but the current role is pretty new. What are your short-term goals for your career?
So for the mediation part of my career, it's really to be the best succession mediator out there. I mean, there's some people who have been doing it. And so I am reaching out to find high-level mentorship, because I think we all need mentors. And so my goal is to hone that skill and to be very adept at coming in and really helping this wealth transfer. Not just in the real estate space, but really the wealth transfer, and being able to maybe get ahead of it and do more talks and broaden my reach that way. And, so that's kind of the first part of it. And then that leads into the fact that I am up here in Sonoma with you, Zane, in the wine and, vineyard and wine real estate industry. Again, owning my own vineyard and seeing what was going on and having vineyards all around me, realizing that these families need my mediation to initiate what's going on, but there's a lot of transfer of these properties that are going on. So really just trying to unlock some of these properties, and just like in the cities, these big swaths of vineyards and wineries, there's things that have to change too. And, so that's my goal over the next couple of, like I said, I'm writing this out, but I think that Sonoma and Napa and Healdsburg there's change afoot, Zane, and you either can, bury your head in the sand and say, no, or you can say, let's figure out what the change is coming and what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, definitely a lot going on in that space. And, I think people would think that the value is continuously rising, and that is quickly being shown in the current market. That is not true.
Not true.
Not even places like Napa that seem to be immune to anything happening around them is sort of seeing that's not lasting either. It was just a little bit more bulletproof than most. But the layer's broken through and people are seeing price changes, and all of a sudden it's become really expensive to own those properties, especially if you need to go get some debt, because debt's expensive, and all those little bubbles are starting to pop, and it's a tough space out there right now.
It is a tough space, but as an old jaded Wall Streeter that I am, we always buy on the down. There's always distress, but I mean, you never buy at the high, and people forget that. So I do think there's opportunity, and Zane, you and I mean, we live in one of the most magically beautiful places in the world, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we both have traveled and seen things,
Yep.
So that's not going to change. And people will always want to be part of it. It's just how are they going to be part of this? Yeah.
Yeah, the down, there's always going to be winners, and unfortunately, there will be some losers. And in this case of little losses, there's probably going to be some of those families that haven't prepared themselves for this drop that will really suffer. And that's where the difficult conversations come in. And that's where mediation comes in, because the families are going to have to make really tough decisions about assets that they might have owned for generations and might just not be feasible anymore.
Absolutely. And again, I'm just going to say history tells the story, because if you go back and see how much raw land was up here in the 70s and 80s, and you just do the math backwards, now we're on generation 3 and they don't want it. They're not qualified for it, nor do they have the cash for it.
Yep.
And we're just back to hard facts again. Yeah.
You mentioned getting a mentor, and I really like that. But can you share in your own words, like, why you think it's important to have a mentor?
Well, it's so important in so many ways. And, I struggled. I mean, I'm of a generation where really it was hard to find a female mentor in my day in Wall Street. I mean, my most amazing mentors were men, and the senior men that I worked for. But there's just nothing like it. I mean, people who have lived through things, and they know where they failed, they know where they succeeded. And, mentors can cushion a blow. They can help you avoid some of the big potholes in life. And good mentors cheer you on, and they find, the nugget of where what you can work on, and, will help you along that route, and give you a historic perspective that, sometimes I think is lost on the youth at the time, that, history is necessary to understand, what has happened in the past and where you really want to go. So I can't overemphasize that everybody who wants to grow in their field, or even grow as a human, should find a mentor that they trust, that they can lean into.
Yeah, mentors all around you. And if you're struggling to identify who that mentor is, join a peer group. One, you'll probably find a mentor in that peer group because they've probably been doing it a little bit longer than you. Or what happens in a peer group is you have conversations and you quickly realize who your mentor is and that they've been there the whole time. So a good way to figure out who that mentor is, and then lean into that relationship. Ask the questions, and most importantly, listen to the answers. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we all talk a little too much and not listen enough. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to learn when you're doing that.
Good points. Yeah. I agree.
Lisa, what advice do you have for anybody that's entering the business world right now to just be more successful, be better leaders? What advice would you give them?
Oh, that's a big question. What advice would I give them? I mean, I think that, we're going to stay on the mentor and the listening aspect, is to not be in such a hurry to, jump in and climb the ladder, to really take your time. And again, find a mentor who is in the industry that you are diving into, or you aspire to, or whatever. And I think the world needs more transparent leaders who kind of, and business people who get in and are vulnerable. Again, you have to be vulnerable and open to ask the questions. There's something our brains do when we say, I know. It's something I caution my children about. The minute we say, I know, we stop learning, and, never stop learning. Right? If you're going to step in business, I truly believe we are in the next revolution of our, we've got AI, we've got this transfer of wealth, we've got this irrelevancy of a lot of things going on, and then this great relevancy of other things. And stay open to learning, and don't be stuck in your thinking.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Just constantly understand that you don't know everything, and you need to learn from people around you. So pay attention, learn to read more, learn to listen more, ask the questions, and understand the world's going to change around you. If you're not evolving, you are basically dissolving, because things will change around you so quickly. We just have to look back at the last 12 months and how much the world has changed with AI coming to the forefront. So constantly learning is critical.
And I love that you said reading, and also paying attention to the news. I feel that like some of the younger generation, and I'm sorry I'm picking on that, but because I do have 3 daughters, and it's like, pay attention. I know there's this whole thing about false news, but there is real news out there. There's a whole world out there. Read, critically think. You went to college because, to learn critical thinking.
Yep.
So don't just take whatever you see on some TikTok video or something and say, take a moment. Does that make sense? Is that real? Should I dive into it? Yeah, that's my big plug for paying attention.
Go click on deep research on ChatGPT, and they'll give you links that you can go read and learn about a topic and figure out for yourself if it's real or not.
Figure out for yourself if it's real or not. Perfect. I love that. Yes.
Lisa, I really appreciate the time with you. I always like to find out something a little bit more personal about people to sort of really round out the conversation. We've obviously found out that you're on Wall Street, you're on your 3rd career, you've got 3 daughters. But what else can you tell us about your life that would, give people a better picture of who Lisa is as a person?
Well, so I'm always seeking balance, Zane. So there's very much the business side of me, but I have this extreme inner Martha Stewart. Like it is really in me. I love to bake. I love to sew. I love that creativity. I love to nest in my home. My home means a lot to me. So I do. And all my friends laugh because I would go out there and conquer the world, Wall Street, and then I'd want to come back and nest and bake for everybody. So I love that. That's a big side of me. Yeah.
I love that too. Lisa, we'd like to end Protea conversations with some rapid fire questions. So if you're ready, I have 5 questions for you.
Okay.
What is your dream vacation?
Galapagos Islands.
Great. Do you prefer audiobook or paper books?
Paper.
If you have 20 minutes to exercise, what would the exercise be?
Aerobics, anything aerobic.
All right. What is your favorite piece of technology that you use to make your life easier?
Well, I guess the iPhone.
Yep, that's a popular choice to that question. Yeah, it is what it is,
boring, right? But it's,
Exactly. Our last question. What was your favorite meal growing up as a child?
Tacos.
Anything? Any specific type of taco?
So tacos were always a big thing in our house, and it was fun.
You got a favorite type of taco or a favorite taqueria that you'd like to go to?
Well, I don't know. I've tasted them all, and no, not really. I mean, chicken tacos. I'm like basic. I like just basic old tacos, the real thing. But yes.
Hard shell or soft shell?
Oh, soft shell.
Good.
That's not basic, but I've evolved to soft shell. Yeah, it's now soft shell. I grew up with hard shell. Yeah, soft shell as an adult.
Yeah. Lisa, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for being a guest on Protea Conversations.
Thank you, Zane.
And with that, we ended another Protea Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning and inspiration. Today, we've gained insight from our guests and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussion has given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Protea Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence, embracing growth. Thank you for listening, be kind, and goodbye from Protea Conversations.